Hello, friends. Welcome to a special Game 1 recap edition of No Cap Room. My name is Jake Fischer, senior NBA reporter for Yahoo Sports, sitting atop the lower bowl media section here at TD Garden. There's a bunch of people doing stuff, and there's a bunch of thankless arena staffers doing what they do to clean up all of the beer stains. And I want to say that to thank them. They deserve a shout out. Look at all these people burning the past midnight oil. It's a real operation. Joining me from our offices in Manhattan, senior NBA writer for Yahoo Sports. It's my man. It's your man. It's everyone's man. It's Dan Devine. How did it feel to watch this game alone in a Midtown Manhattan gigantic office building?
It was, talk about thankless operations. You know, it was really, it was a tough hang, but we made it work. We got a conference room here in the office. There's definitely some people, some buildings operation staff and cleanings folks here that are wondering what the hell I am doing here at midnight on a Friday or Thursday into Friday. But these are the sacrifices we make, Jake. Listen, you're on the road, you're pounding the pavement, you're there in the pressers. I am here with 2 laptops and some takeout. We're all making the sacrifices we need to make. And we had to sacrifice some competitive basketball for a large portion of game 1 because it turns out Boston Celtics really freaking good.
Yeah, Boston Celtics really freaking good. Dallas Mavericks did not come out like they did against Minnesota in Game 5 on the road. In fact, it was like almost the exact opposite. We will get into all that first. I should just state the final score, I think. Celtics 107, Dallas 89. And the Boston Celtics were up by as many as 29 at a certain point in this one. There was a fun comeback at the start of the third where Luka and co dropped it down to 8 points. And it felt like, all right, we're going to have a game. This is a team that, of course, if you've been paying attention, if you haven't, we're going to update you right now. Almost came back from a monstrous 20-point deficit at home against the Clippers in the first round. Game 6 at home, elimination, like the Thunder being on the elimination ropes, a potential Game 7 hanging in the balance. Down 18 with 16 points in the third quarter. Dallas came back and won that series. So there was definitely like a thought, I think, at halftime that, okay, if there is a team to make the biggest comeback in NBA Finals history from down 21 at the half, it would potentially be this club. They got it down to 8, and then that 14-0 run immediately after that. I think it was a 14-4 run to close the entire quarter, but that original burst after a timeout from Joe Mazzulla, about 4:27, if I remember correctly, really just bounced this thing back open. And it made me think about how they came back in Game 3 against Indiana, how they have kind of gotten this monkey off their back of being this team that, sure, there was some angsty vibes in the arena here. There was the typical TD Garden, oh, the Celtics are blowing a big lead murmurs. But this team just seems to have been able, to me, that's like the narrative that I'm taking away from this overall, like the most overarching discussion point. It's that this team that people have ridiculed for having a cakewalk to the finals and potentially being a paper tiger with all the historic numbers in their favor to show how dominant they are. People are expecting them to get up big and then fumble the lead. And they did, but then they got it right back. And that was a moment that I thought kind of cemented to me that this team can do this. And you could see it post-game, and then I'll stop talking. Jaylen Brown in particular, they're not satisfied. And this is a team, of course, that was up 2-1 2 years ago and knows how quickly this thing can turn. So they're not too high after this point. They know that there's a much more series left to take advantage of and win, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know, Dan, am I overstating their bounce backness from like letting go of the rope and then re-grabbing the rope and tugging it back? Or is there something else that you saw?
I think you're right to point to it's sort of a sign of maturity. I think composure is not something we always would have associated with this Celtics core in years past. When the offense started to stagnate, when the possession started to get junky, when they weren't able to string together a few good minutes of basketball, it was like, well, is everything going to spiral from here? And you mentioned that, I think going back to the end of the second quarter, because the Celtics didn't close the quarter great. Luka, I think, had 5 straight. It was like, I think something like 7-0 in the last minute and a half of the second quarter. The run spanning from there through the early part of the third quarter was like 29-9, I believe, Mavericks. And two pieces of good news. One is, as you mentioned, Joe Mazzulla calls the timeout. And there are principles to get back to. We are going to drive the ball. We are going to, because of the way we space the floor, when we run action, we can get somebody turning the corner and downhill. Don't settle for the step back. Don't, ponder and meander your way through the set. Get into the paint. Tatum downhill, Brown downhill, Brown downhill. The next several possessions were all going right at the basket, putting fouls on Derek Lively, who was basically a non-factor in large part because of the foul trouble that he was in, and Boston being able to say, we are getting into the paint and we are going to force the action. Either we're going to draw help and kick and we're going to create good looks that way, or we're going to get layups, or we're going to get to the line. We're going to get good possessions and get this game back on our terms. So that's one good sign, is that you wind up where it's like, we know what we want to get to, and let's clear our minds and get back to what we want to get to. The other piece of good news, if you're going to give up a 29-9 run, it helps to have been up 29 points before that. The Celtics have been, they came out for game one, and whatever concern there might have been about rust or about they didn't face the sharpest battles in the first 3 rounds. Like, are they going to be ready for this? Turns out, yeah, man, they a couple of shaky minutes and then ripped off a 23-5 run in the first quarter to completely take over the game. Even when Dallas punched its way back in that third quarter, it was with a ton of tough shots against pretty good defense. And even so, it never got within 3 possessions. Like, that's what the Celtics can do. They can make you wrong with their offense, and they can make you wrong with their defense. And they're good enough across their positions, especially now with Kristaps Porzingis being back, having that full top 8 they really trust. They are good enough to put you in a position where even if you put 6 minutes of good ball on them, they're going to wear you out. And so I think you're right to note the composure. You're right to note the sort of the widespread contributions there. And I don't think it means that the Mavericks are out of this by any means. As you mentioned, I think they've won game 3 in all 3 of their series so far. Losing game 1 is kind of Jason Kidd's style.
1-6 now in game 1s in Jason Kidd's tenure as the Dallas Mavericks head coach.
Yeah, and probably not the the statistical or the landmark you'd like to have on your resume for Jason Kidd, but they've responded well from there. And I think that when Dallas gets to go back and look at it, I'm interested in going back and looking at it too, just rewatching some of those possessions. There were some shots and some opportunities. They had some really wide open looks that could have cut, a 10-point game into a 7-point game, an 8-point game to a 5-point game. There was a couple of possessions where they got the offensive rebound. They had 2 straight travels at sort of on the back end of that run to really halt their momentum. There were opportunities there. And I think they're going to look back and see on one hand, we squandered some of those opportunities, and that puts us down 1-0 in the series and a race to 4. You never want to be in that position. But beyond that, we come out, we have a better comportment on offense. We put together some better stretches. We make some of those looks that we didn't go down. We can still go back to Dallas tied at 1. There's still an opportunity here for us.
You mentioned Kristaps Porzingis, and he, of course, was probably the player everyone wanted to see the most tonight. As I watch our colleague Ben Rohrbach walk away from a distance.
Hey,
Bye,
Ben.
Keep doing your thing, buddy. And the Celtics kept saying, keep doing your thing, buddy, to Kristaps Porzingis. It was really ironic to me. And I wrote about it last week, or I guess not last week, this week. The days.
They're all melting together, man.
They're all melting together. I don't think it's like an overstated aspect of Porzingis' tenure in Dallas, where the rift of him wanting post touches and Rick Carlisle coming out publicly and discussing how it just was a mathematically inefficient piece of Dallas's historic offense. And then this year, he puts up one of the most historical efficient performances and post-ups in league history with 1.3 points per possession there. And he's just switching. I mean, I thought about this in Manila, and I thought about this tonight during the World Cup, where so much of NBA offense for hunting switches is to get a guard to dance with a big out in the perimeter. But Boston is like the one team that I've really seen so consistently that reverses that.
Yeah.
And they try to just have Kristaps Porzingis just dominate Jaden Hardy on the left elbow. And his start was incredible. The final stat line's not going to show exactly what he did. I mean, he had 18 points in the first half, was 4 or 5 from 3. And the blocks also are like, he's only credited with 3 blocks. He had at least 5 to my count. And there's plenty that he just deterred players from taking. That one of the travels you were talking about, Dan, was Kyrie. He kind of came across the lane. He was going to lean into a fade, and like there was KP. And he did everything that he was brought here to do. That's just the summation of all of the preamble there.
Yeah, Jason Tatum during his on-court interview with Lisa Salters after the game, she's asked like, just what was it like to have him back? And Tatum just had this huge smile on his face. It was like, it's really good to have him back. Like, and yeah, you saw it's every person who had to do jobs like ours and talk about things and write about things was like X Factor, Kristaps Porzingis. And I'm sure that if you were a fan just listening to consuming all this stuff, you were like, talk about somebody else. I'm kind of sick of everybody talking about how he's this important swing factor. And then in like a 5-minute stretch in the first quarter when he comes off the bench, which by the way, only the second time in his career, I believe, came off the bench. First time in 7.5 years,
second time
he came off the bench. Maybe they run that back in game 2 because he was able to catch his rhythm pretty quickly and gave the Boston offense a nice jolt when he came in with the second unit. The floor spacing, the way they can attack and pick and roll, as you mentioned, to generate those switches, his comfort level. That's the thing. Like Rick Carlisle wasn't wrong at the time because Kristaps Porzingis wasn't that good at doing this at the time. He got stronger. His base is stronger. His legs are stronger. He's more comfortable fighting in a phone booth there and understanding the physicality that he's got to play with just to be able to go over the top. He's facing up on Josh Green. He's facing up on Jaden Hardy. He's facing up on Kyrie. He's facing up on Luka. He's going at those guys and saying, if I just go up over the top, I pivot, I sweep through, I get my shoulder into you, I create space. You can't do anything with me up here. Like you're not bothering the release. So then it's just a matter of do I make or miss the shot? He got a couple of free throws early. He got the first jumper to go down and he was off to the races from there. And yeah, you see like there's many reasons for it, but the impact of having another center who is a good defensive player, who's a really good rim protector, and who you feel comfortable-ish with him out on switches, especially when Boston is playing their 2 bigs. Like if you had him switched out onto Luka was hunting every opportunity he got. He was hunting the bigs that he wanted to try to go at. He was poking at Sam Hauser. He was poking at Peyton Pritchard, any opportunity that he had. But when you've got the second big back there, if it's KP out in deep water, but Al Horford's at the rim, there's still a rim protector back there. There's still somebody to contest the lob, which by the way, the lob was like gone from the Dallas offense. I mentioned Derek Lively in foul trouble. Some of it was that Lively was in foul trouble, but a lot of it was just like Boston erased Daniel Gafford. Jason Tatum, part of his quiet, but also good, but also not that great. But also this is kind of what we've been getting from Jason Tatum all postseason game was he's your 6'10" all NBA wing creator is guarding their center every possession. And there's just no physical mismatch there. And he can switch on those screens. And all of a sudden you got to find another way to attack. Like Boston they were locked in and they were ready across the board to take Dallas out of what it wanted to do and to say, all right, if you want to beat us, it's going to be Luka Doncic scoring 50. That's all you're getting is Luka one-on-one.
Mostly too.
Yeah, yes, exactly. He got to the step back a few times, but it's going to be, you're going to have to take tough mid-range shots over and over and over again. And if you make those, we'll deal with it. We're going to get up 43s and we don't think that we're going to win the math battle there. And so I mean, that's the terms of engagement that Boston wants to play on. It's what made them the best team in the NBA all season. And game one, they got that game on their terms, and Dallas was never able to get, with the brief exception of that third quarter. And even within that third quarter, it's all tough twos, a couple of threes, no assists, and just grinding isolation possessions. It's possible for Luka and Kyrie to make enough shots to win that way, but it's really friggin' hard, especially against a defense as versatile, as good, and as deep as Boston's. And now Dallas is going to have to do that 4 times in 6 games, which no one's been able to do to Boston all year.
Yeah, the Celtics were so principled in their, so we have a thankless hero in the background here. They were so principled in staying one-on-one. Like, very rarely did they double. And
couldn't get him in rotation.
Couldn't. And it was such a contrast on the other side of the floor where it just, I mean, a lot of moments to me felt like Dallas was left scrambling with Luka jogging back on defense. And it's not solely on him, because it seemed like there was a lot of like over helping and a lot of overplaying 2 passes away and stuff like that, where the Celtics got a shocking number of wide open threes. I don't know what the number was, but they took 42 threes overall compared to Dallas's 27. And the differential in the 3-point line isn't everything, but it's a hell of a lot when you're making 16 compared to Dallas's 7. And the assist totals, I mean, the Celtics had more blocks than Dallas had an assist for the whole game. And
Dallas finished with 9 assists as a team. So here's some numbers to put to that. Their previous low before that this season was 14. So you're like, dramatically below their season low. This is tied for the second fewest assists in a finals game in the 3-point era. So 1979. The last time a team had this few assists in a playoff game or in a finals game, it was LeBron James's first NBA finals game. 2006-2007 Cavs had only 9 in a game 1 loss against the Spurs. The all-time low water mark is the 98-99 Knicks, had 8 in a loss against the Spurs. So this is, you are seeing a historic kind of like clenching and tightening up on a defensive performance from the Celtics. But some of it, as you mentioned, like if Dallas makes a couple of those open looks, that number looks a little bit different. But it is a glaring number, like for a franchise and a team where Luka is basically, we expect him to put up 30-point triple doubles, to not even get to a triple double as a team is a pretty wild outcome for game 1 of the finals.
The last I looked before garbage time started, non-Luka Mavs were 1 of 11 from deep. Yeah. And that 1 3 was from Derrick Jones. And he hit it early, blew a kiss to the crowd.
And it was above the break. It wasn't even one of the corners.
Above the break. And it looked like, oh, maybe this is going to be a night. And it was not a night. And it was definitely not a night for Kyrie. He was 0 of 5 from distance, 6 of 19 overall. I mean, I don't think it was the Boston crowd that got to him. That's going to be a discussion and a discourse and whatever. But I mean, he seemed really at ease and calm and relaxed in the post-game availability here. That's kind of been his presence all postseason. It's 1 game. And he said something to the effect of, I got a lot of good looks and they just didn't go. And that's also, I think, accurate. I don't think he had, I remember at some point early in the 4th, we started messaging in Slack with our team here about angles we were all going to be pursuing. And one of them was, of course, Kyrie's bad night. And I remember thinking, it doesn't feel like he played bad. There was one real off pass from the wing up top that just trickled out of bounds. I think it was to Lively. They just had a miscommunication there. That travel we talked about. But yeah, he got, I thought, relatively good looks. He hit some ridiculous, gorgeous Kyrie sidestep fadeaway stuff. But they're just going to need more from him to win these games. That's just the bottom line. For all the praise he's gotten along the road to this point, he needs to continue to play to be worth receiving more of that praise, or else Dallas just does not have a shot.
And specifically, Dallas does not have shot creators, right? And that's kind of the ethos of the team, the identity of the team as it's been constructed is Luka and Kyrie create everything. And then you've got guys who can eat off of that creation. You've got lob threats that can finish. You've got corner 3-point shooters who can catch and shoot. You've got a couple of combo guards. I mean, with Jaden Hardy can create his own shot. We saw a fair amount of that in garbage time, which was Jaden Hardy's time to shine tonight. But like the rest of the everything else, it's like those guys eat up whatever 55-60% of the usage, and everybody else is complimentary off of that. And if I wrote about this I kind of wrote about like a lot of stuff in the series preview because I just couldn't stop writing at a certain point. But that was the matchup to me, was like, can the combination of Drew Holiday and Derek White, and then also everybody, because guarding Kyrie Irving is a whole team job, can they get him into, like we were talking about with Luka, chase you inside the arc, keep you away from the rim, and force you to subsist on and live on those tough, contested mid-range fadeaways. Kyrie Irving can make those shots. He has highlight reels full of them, right? But it's a tough way to live. And during the regular season, in the two matchups, I believe he had 41 points on 43 shots across 2 games against Boston. And it's not all like brutally tough triple coverage, whatever. But it's difficult shots, and they're not like layups, and they're not rhythm shots all the time, and they're coming late in the clock, or they're coming with a hand flashing at you on a dig down or whatever, and that can be a tough way to live, even for an elite shot maker. And you saw that tonight. I think 6 for 13 inside the arc, 0 for 5 from beyond it. Never got in a rhythm. Never. I don't think ever got to the free throw line. Yeah, no free throws, which was also a matter of, I mean, Boston defends without fouling as well as anybody, but that was, I think Kyrie had 2 free throw attempts in 73 minutes against the Celtics during the regular season. So if you're not allowing him to catch a rhythm that way, you're not allowing him to catch a rhythm getting to the rim early in the game, and he's got to create his own rhythm there, his own flow, it becomes so much more difficult for Dallas to score. And then if he can't, where is the offense coming from? Especially, as you mentioned, if the defense is so disciplined and so locked in on, we are not helping. You are not going to get open looks on the perimeter. It is going to be Luka, creating his own shot, Kyrie creating his own shot. Anything else you get is going to have to be like off the offensive glass. Like you are not getting drive and kick. You are not getting swing, open look. And then on the other side, Boston was getting all of that. And you mentioned that, like, Jaylen Brown, dramatic, great third quarter for him, really like hot knife through butter when they needed him to get, part of it was the way he was attacking Luka up top. Anytime he got Luka on the matchup, putting him in action, going to try to drive on him. I thought that Boston was really purposeful about the way that they attacked Luka, whether it was Tatum, whether it was Brown, Kristaps on the switches, whatever, like make him work in space. And Jaylen Brown being able to get downhill, Jason Tatum being able to get downhill, drawing that help, and then spray. Like Boston got the game exactly the way it wanted it to work, with the exception of about a 6-minute stretch in the third quarter that was uphill sledding for Dallas. So I think that there are opportunities there. They'll look at the film, they'll look at what happened and say, a couple things go our way there. We're right back in this thing. A couple of those shots go down middle of the third quarter. A couple of those possessions don't come up empty. Maybe we're taking a lead into the fourth, or we're erasing that deficit. But Boston can also come back away from it and say, wasn't even our best offensive game, and we got almost whatever we want whenever we wanted it. And our defensive game plan worked exactly the way we wanted it. So a lot to feel good about for a Celtics fan tonight.
2 more individual performances, just quick thoughts on before we'll take an ad break here and look ahead to game 2. Mm-hmm. Do you want the good or the bad first?
You know me, I'm a lifelong pessimist. Give me the bad, baby.
Maxi Kleber was terrible. And he's a
good.
Really nice guy. I got some intrepid reporting at Media Day to prepare in case he had popped off, because I did think this is, and look, plenty of series left to go.
Sure.
He could end up being a critical piece in Dallas's efforts to mix and match lineups to combat Boston's size and what have you, and switchability and blah, blah, blah. I don't even care about the defensive side. Offensively, like, he's also out there for the same type of, he's not Kristaps Porzingis, but the same type of gravity
to add a dimension to Luka's stuff that KP does for Tatum and Brown and whoever on the other side. And Kleber just didn't even look to shoot the ball. He shot one time, and it was in garbage time. And there was plenty of possessions where it swung out to him on the corner, and he either held it for a second or head faked the closeout, or there was a guy in the corner and he faked it. Just shoot the ball, dude. Like, that's why you're out there. And he looked like a shell of himself who was not feeling comfortable. I mean, I think his first game back was game 4 against Minnesota, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So he's still in the throes of like returning, and he's wearing like a thing on his shoulder, but he didn't look like he was ready to play at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's in those 2 games against Minnesota, he went 2 for 6 combined from the floor. And like he wasn't aggressively looking for his shot when it came to him at all. You're absolutely right. Like I don't have a timestamp to point to, but there's one possession in my brain where I'm like, it was a hit-ahead pass. He was all by himself. There was no Celtic within about 15
on the
feet
right
of him,
wing,
and he just didn't even look at the rim. And so the whole, in order to gain the benefit of playing a floor spacer at the 5, defense, you have to make the defense believe they need to guard you. And if he's not doing that, then he can still bring some value defensively as a, being able a little bit more mobile to guard in space and more switchable, more comfortable switching out onto a KP, out onto a Horford out there, out onto a Tatum. Like he's a big guy that can guard wings. So we've seen some of that, but against a defense like Boston, they're going to smell blood in the water. And if you are not a willing participant on offense, they are going to make life much more difficult on the other 4 guys on the court. So now, having said that, what's your good? Let me hear the positives now. Give me the glass half full.
It's a Celtics guy. Who do you think it's going to be?
Is it Drew Holiday?
It's Sam Hauser, baby.
Sam Hauser. Okay, sure. Let me hear it.
2 for 2 from deep after the dude struggled against Indiana, and he also held up defensively. Like,
he really did.
If you wanted to, I'm not the type of guy. This is more of a Dan Devine. This is Dan Devine's wheelhouse of like theorizing what the matchups are going to be before the series starts, because we're just going to fucking see it. And it's just like to me the equivalent of following all the tiebreakers at the end of the regular season. Like, just wake me up on the Monday after it's over and I'll find out what the standings are.
Right.
So there was a lot of thought around the league. All right, like, Sam Hauser struggled against Indiana. If he's out there, Luka's going to be hunting that dude left and right. First possession that he had Luka on the switch, poked it free. There was another possession where he had Kyrie in the left corner over here and forced him into a tough step back, and he bricked it off the side of the backboard. The 2 shots go down in each corner. The second one he hit in the right corner in the first half was one of those. We're seeing it more and more in the league where you catch it at your shoulders and just kind of, you don't even load it.
Yeah, no dip. Just keep it high, let it go.
Dip. And when those go in, they just kind of have an extra like splat to them. So good for Sam Hauser, man, because he talked about like the rotations being tight. Like, Boston did not go past their 8 guys until the game was in doubt. And I was starting to wonder if they would even go 8 at a certain point if Hauser didn't have it, because the stakes are just too high. But he had it, plus 17 in 16 minutes off the bench. Shout out Sam Hauser.
Yeah, he had, he had not had much success at all since the end of the Miami series, really. It's, you see, a lovely podcasting here, but counting live on air, 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. I think it was like 8 for 23, 8 for 24, something like that from 3. And as you mentioned, like 0 for 2, 1 for 5, 0 for 3, 1 for 6, like really not getting the shots off. And so for him to see a couple go through, but more than that, for him to be like, I can physically hold up when they try to hunt me. And that everybody on Boston held up. Like, Peyton Pritchard is the smallest guy. He's the guy who's going to get the Luka's going to peck at him. And the answer was, I'm going to get into your kitchen. I'm going to be like physically on top of you. I'm going to fight over the screen as best I can. And then we're going to bring like Drew Holiday with nail help, or Derek White with nail help. Then White, when Pritchard was able to rotate, get Luka to turn his back, There was Derek White to poke the ball away, got a layup down the other end in transition. Hauser, 6'8", 215, 220 or so, like physically able. He's not stronger than Luka, but he's not just like a shrinking violet who's going to wilt as soon as he gets, a bump or a bang. And so and even the bigs, it's going to look ugly sometimes when Kristaps Porzingis or Al Horford gets drawn out on a switch onto Kyrie Irving, or gets drawn out on a switch onto Luka Doncic. They're dancing, then a step back happens, or, Kyrie's able to, basically Nightcrawler bamf his way past Horford on the baseline and get to a runner. Like sometimes those plays are going to happen, but by and large, those guys, it was game plan discipline. It was keep them in front as best you can. Horford had a couple of great contains and contests, and it even blocked the Luka step back one time. Like those guys were they were competing. They were so ready for what was going to be required of them in this game. And you start looking like, all right, well, if you're not going to consistently beat up Kristaps on a switch, if he's able to move that with that calf well enough to hold up on the switch, you're not going to beat up Al Horford on the switch. You're not going to beat up Sam Hauser on a switch. You're not going to beat up Peyton Pritchard on a switch. Where are you punishing this Boston defense? And the answer that Luka and the rest of that Dallas offense found for most of the night was nowhere.
I'm actually being told we need to talk about Tatum and Brown before we get to the ad break. So
okay, so let's do it. Here's my take on Jason Tatum. Can I give you my take?
Do it in 60 seconds.
Jason Tatum's game one was Jason Tatum's entire postseason in miniature. It is underwhelming at times. There are ugly parts where you're like, it should look better than that, shouldn't it? And then you look up and he's got the game high in rebounds. All of the offense was engineered through his ability to drive and kick and create. He has 5 assists and he's like plus 19 in 42 minutes. He guarded the center. He guarded everybody on switches. He does everything, and the team wins. And you're like, it should look cooler than that, though. Why doesn't it look cooler than that? And it's like, well, I don't know, but they won by a bunch. And so that's my take on Jason Tatum. It's like we might find ourselves maddened to some degree by it not looking the way other stars look, but maybe Jason Tatum's a little less Kobe in this way, and maybe Jason Tatum's a little more Tim Duncan in this way.
Interesting. My Jaylen Brown take, he's who I'm writing about tonight.
Mm-hmm.
He said after Game 6, while cradling the Eastern Conference Finals MVP trophy, I think that's Bob Cousy, that he really wanted to take his defense up another level this year. He made it a goal of his to finish all defense. He did not. He took it personally.
It's the Larry Bird trophy, by the way, just to clarify.
It's Larry Bird.
You're in Boston. We've got to get the right trophy.
Are you sure about that? Oh yeah, Bob Cousy is the championship, is the Eastern Conference Championship trophy,
right?
And Larry Bird is the apologies because I asked. It was funny. I asked like Mike Zarin, the Celtics longtime assistant general manager, I want to say, came into the post-game locker room in Indianapolis, and just kind of like another day at the office to him, and I was like, "Oh, you don't give a crap about this, do you?" He walked over. He goes, I love Bob Cousy, but we care about Larry O'Brien. And that's why I had Bob stuck in my head. But yeah, I mean, he comes out guarding Luka, he being Jaylen Brown. He has that vicious block on Kyrie during the 14-0 third quarter sprint. And he just is a two-way force. He is truly one of the best 15, 20 players in the NBA. To me, it's an affront that he was not on an all-NBA team. But I don't vote. I was going to say, you can't do that because you do the thing where you're like, awards are bullshit, man. Why are we voting on any of this? Awards are bullshit.
I know, but then you're like, well, it's a travesty that he wasn't on it. All right, well, be the change you want to see in the world, my friend. Also, the one time that they tried to get the lob, Jaylen Brown snuffed it out on Derrick Jones Jr., and then they reset it, and he snuffed him again. Jaylen Brown with two like hellacious weak side blocks or help side blocks on one possession. That dude was everywhere he needed to be tonight, and a huge reason why Boston's up 1-0.
I need to get back to my hotel, so we're going to take a break, and then we're going to finish this up and talk about what to look forward to in Game 2. Okay, welcome back to No Cap Room here on the Ball Don't Lie podcast. The Mavericks, remember, got smoked by the Clippers in Game 1, and I wouldn't say smoked by OKC, but it was like a definitive OKC was head and shoulders above Dallas in Game 1 there. They won both Game 2s in those series and won the series, right? That's why they're still here. Also, Boston
lost game 2 at home twice already in the playoffs. Of course, that historic 3-point shooting effort from Miami. Cleveland comes back, does it there. So there, to me, would seem to be plenty of possibility that this series goes back to Dallas, tied 1-1. I think there are a couple of things that obviously need to go a different way for that to happen. The first is just shots going in the basket. It's a make or miss league. But I think overall, like, how Dallas can just generate easier looks is going to be an important thing. I don't know exactly what they're going to do. And also, like, Joe Mazzulla is not going to tell us we need. I'm making a public service announcement to the press corps. Anyone who's still left here who can't hear me because I'm talking quietly. He's going to talk about game plan and poise and effort and communication and execution. He's not going to tell us what they're trying to do. However, if there's one thing I believe from what he has said in the past, I don't expect Boston to give Dallas the exact same look game after game after game, even quarter after quarter after quarter. At a certain point, as much as Jaylen Brown was doing well tonight, they switched the matchup and put Drew Holiday on him being Luka. So they're going to do some things different. And I think, to me, it's a matter of what Dallas can, like, exert their will on whatever our defensive adjustments or reaffirmations that Boston does, because they're like letting you pick your poison basically by doing this type of, staying home, individualized defense type of thing. I don't know what I would do if I was Jason Kidd, but Dan, do you have any ideas?
Well, Jason Kidd's a lot smarter than me with this kind of stuff, so I'll defer there.
But Hall of Fame point guard.
Yeah, shockingly, I haven't gotten elected, which is wild. Maybe in years to come, the contributors wing is where I'll go in.
Is that the verb of? Is it an election?
It's like, it's like a shadowy cabal that picks, the Hall of Famers, I think, right? I don't know.
Do they eat children?
I don't know about it. I don't know about all that. Reference. I don't know about all that, but I will say, I think the idea when Dallas was having its best success, it was when it was, that period early in the third quarter where they were it seemed like they were a little more purposeful in terms of like early off ball screens. Like, it's not just Luka calling up the guy he wants. It's what actions can you run earlier in the possession to like manipulate the chessboard so that if Boston's got like Kyrie in the corner that's where Luka's at, it's a little harder to shade onto him, and that's why Luka's a little bit better able to get the one-on-one drive. Now that can lead to better looks for Luka, more paint touches for Luka, or more mostly Luka, but whoever's on the ball, like more paint touches, more looks at the rim, which, as you had mentioned earlier, Boston did such a great job of just basically shutting off for most of the game. And maybe if enough of those body blows, a little bit of the help starts to come over. It opens up some more angles for the lobs. It opens up some more kickouts. I think Boston, you mentioned Joe Mazzulla is not going to give you shit. Maybe part of the reason he's not going to give it to you is because he is like absolutely doctrinaire, zealot, adherent to like, we are about our game plan. We are about our poise. We are about our not helping. We are like, it is about your execution and your principles. Yeah. And I mean, sometimes, these things become cliches because they're true. And like, I think he is looking at, and that, I mentioned earlier with the 3-point shooting there, I think he's got a real firm belief in like, we win the math, we win the game. And if we can keep you from getting kickouts for clean looks, one of the most telling swing stats, I tweeted about this earlier, was corner threes, right? Nobody creates more corner threes than Luka. The Dallas Mavericks were taking more corner threes per game than anybody in the playoffs. Derek Jones Jr. PJ Washington led all scorers in corner threes heading into this round. Derek Jones Jr. was second. Dallas took 2 corner threes tonight, and they missed them both. Or at least as of garbage time. One of them
was that Kyrie brick that Sam Hauser was guarding him, baby.
Locking him up. Sammy clamps. But
my phone is now updating, by the way, because it's a late night update, and I am now worried about my ability to call an Uber home. So.
Okay. Well, all right. We'll get you out of here. Yeah.
No, it's
So,
not.
I think if they're able to be a little bit more purposeful in sort of early actions that can get, create more openings for paint touches, maybe enough of those on a long enough timeline eventually get Boston to switch out of what it's been doing. But they seemed awfully disciplined in terms of what they wanted to do. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be that. It's going to need to be like you're on the tough shot express. Kyrie's going to have to make those. Luka's going to have to keep making those. And, if they're like, as we saw against Minnesota, as we saw at times against Oklahoma City, those guys are just going to have to either score 70 or create 70 somewhere. Boston's an awfully tough team to do that against, but that's going to be the challenge for Dallas in this series. Find a way to get him in rotation or make a load of tough shots.
I think a word that's like bubbling under the surface of everything you just said is a word that Jason Kidd has repeated a ton throughout this playoff run, is playing with pace and getting into stuff. Like talking about early action stuff. Like I think a lot of that third quarter comeback effort just felt like things were moving quicker and there's a sense of urgency. Luka scored a little tough mid-range jumper and then hit a step back three at the end of the first half. And I was like, oh, okay, I wonder if that's going to get something going. And it did. And they're just, they were throwing head-to-head passes and it seemed like they were getting things going earlier and faster. And that's definitely one way to attack a very stingy defense when they are not set. So I'm expecting that'll be, I mean, I was not on Jason Kidd's post-game stuff. I was in Boston's room. So if he said that already, and he said that already, but I would expect him to continue to say that when we have media availability on Saturday in between games here. And I think that's kind of like a good frame to put everything you had just said under or within as well.
And when you think about pace and the Mavericks, you think about Kyrie Irving, right? Like he's the guy who gets them into that. It was a huge part of their game one win over Minnesota was Kyrie being aggressive right from the rip, being able to, I forget how many points he had in the first half of that game, but him like, pushing off misses, him getting out in transition, him, even like looking for hit ahead lobs from Luka off of makes rather, like whenever he had an opportunity in the half court to hit the gas, he did. And that could also be a way if Kyrie's of that mindset from the opening tip and they're successful in getting him a few of those downhill, off of slot cuts or in transition or whatever, where he's running into the catch and able to get into the paint. Maybe that is where you develop some of that rhythm early. And if once the faucet's on, he's awfully tough to turn off. So yeah, I think getting him going early has to be an important part of what Dallas tries to establish, and that could be one way to do it for sure. You're absolutely right. You mentioned that early third quarter portion, Boston turning the ball over, empty possessions, quick threes that miss. Like that's when you can push. When Boston's executing and making those shots, a lot tougher to get out and inject that pace into the game. So they got to be opportunistic. They got to seize those opportunities when they crop up.
I think we're going to end it there because it's been a fun show and it's late. And I just want to say one last thing on the way out. That's really just a personal reflection as I like to do. I'm on the road. I'm not going to lie, dude, because I went to school here and this is the arena that
Northeastern, right?
I went to Northeastern.
Yep.
I saw that one Providence Friar got a lot of attention tonight. And
shouts out to Doris Burke, man. I have a little bit of jealousy in my heart because I know that I'm never going to be the top Providence media member, but Doris Burke deserves every bit of flowers that are being thrown at her feet right now.
I will say on a not jokey note, yeah, to like walk off the plane the other day and recognize that like this is the city that I attended school to like do this, and we're here. It's pretty nice. I've been hitting some old spots. I'm getting breakfast with my favorite professor tomorrow at my favorite breakfast spot down the street from campus, seeing old friends. I walked back from media day here yesterday through the Common to the hotel, and it's just cool, man. Basketball's cool. The journey's cool, and I hope to come back here for Game 5 because that would be a bummer if this series goes just 4 games. But everything, like we said, I mean, there are definitely some people pregame who were like, this is not going to be a close series, Celtics in 5. And I picked Dallas in 6, largely because I didn't think Dallas is going to win, and I just wanted to go the opposite of what I thought would happen. But I am optimistic, and I'm turning orange here. John Gennaro is my thing. Does this even matter? Because we're signing off. I'm going Delirious. Finals. It's fun to be here. Cool moment. Boston, great city. Although New York is a greater city. And the second I
Jesus Christ, man, land the plane.
I don't know. I'm rambling. Love you all.
I'm glad you're happy, and I'm glad you're enjoying life at the finals. I'm enjoying life in a conference room in Midtown Manhattan. I will be enjoying life when the series shifts back to Dallas. But for now, we got to wait and see if Dallas can have it shift back there at a split. That's their goal. They got to come back ready for Sunday night. And after that game, we will be back with you. We'll see how punch drunk Jake is at that point and how drunk I am. But we're going to be with you again on Sunday night after game 2.
I won't be.
It's right. It's not you.
Be Vinny Goodwill and Dan Devine.
That's right.
And then No Cap Room comes back Thursday morning. I believe we're going to do it after game 3, which is Wednesday night. That's our tentative schedule. If you cannot live another minute without knowing when the next Ball Don't Lie episodes are coming. But that is legitimately all we have for you today. Thanks to super producer John Gennaro, who does all the things to make this show look and sound great. Subscribe to Ball Don't Lie on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you're currently listening on, and leave us a 5-star review. We thank you for listening, and we'd appreciate it if you came back again next week for another episode of No Cap Room.